Rowe. I'm a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. We are honored today to be joined by Senator Tim Scott from the great state of South Carolina for a conversation on his very important new book, America, A Redemption Story, Choosing Hope, Creating Unity. Before I introduce Senator Scott and welcome him to the stage, I want to offer a little bit of context as to why this conversation is so important today. How do we take virtues and put them into action for the communities that have not yet experienced the American dream? As a senior fellow at AEI and someone who has run public charter schools in the Bronx for more than a decade, I am obsessed with the goal of upward mobility. What are the factors that normally drive whether a young person of any background acquires the habits of minds and skills that typically lead to success as adults? In my time with thousands of young people, from working at Teach for America, to the White House, to MTV, to the Gates Foundation, and now launching a network of international baccalaureate public charter high schools in the Bronx, I've worked with kids from every conceivable background. I've seen children grow up in disadvantaged situations, and unfortunately, sometimes recreate that disadvantage as they enter young adulthood. But I've also seen many kids emerge from poverty or crime or dysfunction and lead lives of their own choosing. The question is, what makes the difference? In my experience, young people who ultimately thrive as adults have usually had a sense of personal agency, which I define as the force of their free will, guided by moral discernment to learn right from wrong. They have usually formed strong families, regardless of the family that they grew up in. They typically have had a strong faith commitment, which empowered them to live by a moral code. They have typically had access to great schools through education freedom. And assuming those three foundational elements, they have had an entrepreneurial spirit informed by the dignity and discipline of work. In my own book, Agency, I propose a new framework, Free, based on encouraging young people to embrace 4 pillars: family, religion, education, and entrepreneurship. A revitalization of the 4 local mediating institutions that we know drive human flourishing. And today I'm pleased to announce the launch of AEI's Free Initiative, where we will seek to educate and equip a movement of local leaders who are already reinvigorating these crucial institutions that help develop agency in young people. Central to this effort is a series of gatherings AEI will be hosting across the country. Sparked by the conference we held in May in Old Parkland, Texas, that brought together brilliant minds, such as Bob Woodson, who's in the room, to discuss alternative approaches to tackle the challenges facing Americans of all races. We will hold our first free conference in Birmingham, Alabama, this November 2nd through the 4th, bringing together civic, academic, nonprofit, business, and faith leaders for important discussions on how to implement the lessons we have learned about upward mobility. We aim to uplift agents of agency around the country, people leading by example, combating unhelpful narratives, and lighting the way toward lives rich in relationship, health, and well-being. This is why I'm so excited to welcome Senator Tim Scott to AEI today to talk about the American dream. I can think of few people whose life stories and work reinforce what's needed to move from poverty to prosperity by engaging the core components of agency. Just last week, Senator Scott hosted the School Choice Caucus breakfast to discuss ways to empower every single family in America with the resources to decide where, when, and how they will educate their children. Overall, since joining the Senate in 2013, Senator Scott's efforts have sought to strengthen family stability, increase the footprint of faith communities, expand educational choice for students, and spark a new era of entrepreneurship in cities across South Carolina and the United States. Senator Scott, I'd love to welcome you to the stage. I look forward to our discussion. We've both gone tireless.
Yes, we have.
Yes. So
The world is as it should be.
Yes, as it should be, a comfortable conversation. Well, you've written a fantastic book.
Thank you.
And I'd love to just chat with you first about the title, America, a Redemption Story. It's this idea that it sounds like we're almost unfinished. We're still in pursuit. Yeah. And I'd love to, what was the inspiration behind the title and the book itself?
Well, the inspiration was that, in my opinion, most American families are just one or two generations away from the story of redemption. We're in different parts of that journey, but the truth is that the greatest part of this nation is the chance to get a second chance. And the story of redemption really is about having a second chance to start all over. And I've had that happen in my life, and the more I understand American history, the more I realize that it's all about how your pain reveals your purpose, how your obstacles open the door of opportunities, and frankly, how tragedy leads to triumph. And typically, the bad comes first, and then the good. So,
got it. And in it, you say the American dream isn't a thing of the past, but a miracle of the present.
yes.
Do you sense that many young people, or that the American dream is further in question today than that you know, it's a thing of the past versus a miracle of the present?
Yeah, one of the things I think I say in the book is that my grandfather in 1921, born in segregated South Carolina in a very small town called Sally, South Carolina, what he knew then, some doubt now. So 100 years later, we're doubting the goodness of our own country in a way that's become popularized through the tribal nature that some are trying to see America in that through the prism of tribalism. The truth is that we are better today than we certainly were in 1921. And my grandfather's confidence that being better versus being bitter was the only goal in life, that if you wanted to be a victor, you could not be a victim, that concept was embedded in his heart. So he knew then, with some doubt now, and he believed in the goodness of America. He believed that the future was better than the past, and he lived long enough to watch his grandson pick out a seat in Congress because of the goodness of America. And one of the things I hope that we are able to uncover is the truth of who we are. And the truth of who we are is we are better today than we've ever been.
Wow.
Doesn't mean that we're not going through a gut punch in some areas of our nation's history, but the truth is that we are so much better off today than we have ever been, and I believe the best is still yet to come. Going through a gut punch helps you focus your attention on the priorities that are necessary to improve or to continue the advancement of the American people. As goes America, so goes the world. So we have a lot of work that needs to be done, but the good news is we're in the right place to get it done.
Yes, I can already tell there are going to be a few nuggets dropped. It's better to be better than bitter.
Yeah,
right?
There's always a choice in life, right?
Yep.
My grandfather, a guy who stopped going to school in the 3rd grade because literally in South Carolina in 1928 or so, 29, there was no need for an educated black man, is what he was taught. So think about that picture and fast forward to, I'm 7 years old, my parents are divorced, we're moving into my grandparents' house. My mother, my brother, and myself are sharing one bedroom and one bed. And my grandfather is teaching me these very valuable lessons about being better or being bitter. It would have been so easy for him to be bitter all his life. But he believed in the goodness of America.
Yeah.
In a time when it would be completely understandable why he would not believe in the future of this country.
Yeah.
But he knew that the sacrifices that had gone before him made his meager, challenging plight less challenging. That the abundance in his heart and the love he had for my grandmother, that combination formed a new foundation for a generation of wearers.
Yeah, oh, wow.
And because of that, I was blessed with this inheritance of positivity, this concept, the dignity of work. It was almost like imprinted on my soul. How can things not get better if you have faith, you have abundance of love, and you see the land of opportunity expanding in your direction?
Yeah.
Run run towards it.
Yep.
This is what my grandfather died.
I can't wait to talk to you more about how we instill that same spirit within young people today who may not be having that realization. You talk in the book, one of my favorite quotes is that you say, education is the closest thing to magic that we have in this country. At the heart of that magic, just like in so much of life, is opportunity. And at the heart of that opportunity is choice.
Yeah.
Just expand on that.
Well, the way I look at it, I'm kind of a simpleton, so you'll figure that out really fast. But the truth is that the most affluent people in our country, they choose the school to send their kids to. Middle class and upper middle class folks, they choose the neighborhood for the best schools. The only people without choice are moms like mine, living in poverty, working long hours, trying to keep food on the table and the lights on. For that mom, whether you're in rural America or in inner city, the one thing you don't have is choice. We can change that overnight by simply saying there's a backpack where the money follows the child. And if you're going to a failing school, Title I schools typically, why not give the child and the parent the choice of where to send their kid? And I think that time has come. 68% of Democrats, 67% of independents, around 70% of African Americans, about 72, 74% of Hispanics, 66% of Asians, all agree that school choice is the path forward. That's good news when both sides of the aisle come to, actually, that's like Jesus walking on water. That's a miracle, modern day miracle. We're all on the same page politically.
No, this is a fundamental point. I just opened a new high school in the Bronx, District 12 in the Bronx, where of all the students that started ninth grade in 2015, 4 years later, only 7% graduated from high school ready for college. Meaning that they started ninth grade and they dropped out along the way, or they actually did earn their high school diploma, but still couldn't do math nor reading without remediation if they were to go to college. So that structure, so even with that buy-in, it sounds like from lots of different groups, that reality still exists. How do we get more kids to be able to have that first rung to get on the ladder of success?
I think we have to work a little harder at looking for the solutions that already work. We have examples around the country of education options that are available, that are successful. Success Academy is a great example in New York City, where it's a charter school that gets basically 50 cents on the dollar, but it produces results that are better than the average public school in the state of New York. And one of the beauties of, I think she has Eva Moskowitz has over 40 schools now. And they're consistently in the top 5 in the state in reading, math, and science. What's more fascinating is the fact that 83% of the kids in her school are either African American or Hispanic with an average household income of under $30,000 in New York City, 95% being free lunch, single parent households, and yet they score above average, above the majority population in New York City. These kids are outperforming the other kids in the city on standardized tests. How do you do that? Well, she created an environment that's conducive for learning. There's a friend of mine who started a school in Charleston called the Meeting Street Academy. A guy named Ben Navarro wanted to prove that poor kids in poor communities can learn just like everybody else for about 10 or 15% more than the average public school student. In Charleston County, he's able to get those kids within 2 years in the top 20% nationwide. So there's a model that works. We just need to follow that model. There's another model in California. There's some in Philadelphia. The truth is that when we follow the model that works for the kids, it works out really well.
So what is the rationale for the people who know that those models exist and yet continue to fight to preserve the status quo?
I don't know. Let me give you a more in-depth answer. I think there's this theory that in order to save them all, you have to wait until you have a solution for them all. It's as if the house is on fire. Instead of saving as many as you can in the house that's on fire, you're going to wait until you can put the whole fire out and then go inside and figure out who's left. That, to me, just seems ridiculous. But that's how it appears that we are treating education. The second thing I'd say is that currently, public education seems to be more interested in adults than they are kids. Big labor unions and bureaucrats have a powerful impact on what the child is going to experience. That's a problem.
Yes. Again, I run schools in New York, and primarily due to the teachers union, there's a cap on even the ability to open charter schools. So in that same district, we're only 7% of kids.
Yes.
Primarily because of that force. Again, how do we mobilize more awareness, attention, action? It's so central to your book because you talk about
Absolutely.
how education was a central part of your movement upward, and yet these forces are so powerful.
They are, because they're embedded. I've often said, as a conservative, we should be the party of parents. The fact of the matter is that when I gave the statistics earlier, what it reinforces is it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on. The one thing, if there is a silver lining in the pandemic, and it's hard to see any silver lining in the pandemic, the one thing is the learning loss, being out of the classroom, exposed the weakness within the public education system.
For all kids.
For all kids. So much so that parents re-engage at a high level on a consistent basis, and they demand participation. They demand collaboration and cooperation. That is good news for all of our kids.
Yep.
And the more we spend time understanding what's happened, the more we should focus our attention on making sure that the policies in place help us bridge the gap because of the pandemic, and we focus on what actually works around the country.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I love so much about your philosophy, whether it's in education or in opportunity zones, is that you're looking for innovations that break the mold, that are actually focused on what will actually help people. So talk about opportunity zones as
Yes.
well, because that's almost a parallel to school choice and educational freedom. Like, how do we attract more of these kinds of initiatives?
But Ian, you know that if you know me at all, the one thing I love is competition. I played ball, football in high school, a little bit in college, ran track. I love competition. You run for office, you're in a competition. So the truth is, the question is, what is the best environment to improve outcomes and reduce cost?
Yes.
In America, we call that the free market system. It works in education too, and it works in the opportunity zones. What I basically did was I designed a program that provided more incentives for those who have resources to look in areas that need the resources without gentrifying those areas. And because of the capital gain tax deferral and the incentives around it, we saw more investment go back into the poorest zip codes than we've seen in my lifetime. And so in 2019, Opportunity Zones saw $29 billion invested into the most critically challenged financial areas in the country, and it also helped lead us to the lowest level ever recorded in this country of poverty.
And how does that even help the creation of small businesses, for example?
Well, one of the things that you do, the more incentives that you have to drive down the cost, the more likely you are to drive up the number of entrepreneurs in neighborhoods. As a guy whose life was changed by having an entrepreneur who was my mentor when I was 15 years old and starting my own business, so that I was able to understand the power of being a job creator in my neighborhood and then employing people from my neighborhood was really powerful. And it becomes momentum. The more small businesses you have in communities, the lower the unemployment will be.
Yep.
The fewer small businesses, the higher the unemployment, the higher the unemployment rate is, and the lower the graduation rate is in high school. So there's a correlation that flows through those communities, and it's one of the reasons why I love the free. I love the education and the entrepreneur pieces of that, because they are absolutely essential to human flourishing.
Yes.
You can't do it without both.
Yep.
I always say that a good economy makes all things possible. So the question is, what makes a good economy? A part of that is a good workforce. Well, what makes a good workforce? Education. Well, what kind of education? Well, it has to at least be two prongs. You're too young to remember these days when we had shop in high school, where you could.
No, I did. I went to Brooklyn
okay.
Tech. I went to
that's
Brooklyn
one
Tech High School. We took shop.
Okay, so shop is a really important part of it.
Yes.
So you can have a
I
six-figure
guess that
income.
means I'm old.
That means you're. I think I'm young, so I'm not sure what you're talking about. Anyways, I was trying to give you a backhanded compliment there, but you just Oscar will work on this later, okay? So his son.
Yeah, Oscar, my son, is here.
Yes, 10 years old, gonna be a baseball player when he grows up. Literally, the fact of the matter is that when we find ways to give kids as many options in a cafeteria plan for their future, whether you want to go to a 2-year community college, whether you want to go to an apprenticeship program, whether you want to go to a 4-year college. The truth of the matter is that you can be a plumber and make 6 figures. No student loan debt. 6 figures.
I think this is a fundamental point because for so long, college for all has been the mentality.
Yes.
There's really been pushing kids into a certain predetermined outcome of what should happen after high school.
Right, and we never studied the ROI. So one of the things I did with the bipartisan fashion was look for ways to help people understand the cost of college and the return on the investment in college. So financial literacy is a major component of understanding, appreciating, what do you get for a philosophy degree
Right.
versus a political science degree? What do you get with a political science degree? I can tell you. You get a job in the business world. So that's what I did. I started a couple of Allstate insurance agencies because if you're not going to law school, typically a political science degree is not necessarily the best decision one can make to make some money, right? So you figure out another path forward. So if we had financial literacy as a core component as it relates to not only going to college, but what are you going to get out of the college? What do you get for $33,000 average student loan debt? Well, on average, you get about $2 million in extra lifetime income. So it is not a bad deal. But is it the only way to get the $2 million of lifetime income? The answer is no. So the question is, what are those other avenues? And are we exposing people to that? Back in the 70s, they started this campaign, marketing campaign, around this guy in a perfect suit, and next to him was this guy in, like he was a coal miner or something. And they said, this is the job you want. You want this job that makes you a white-collar guy. There's dignity in all work.
Yes.
There's dignity in all work. Find out what you want to do and do it. Don't let someone predetermine this is the only path for success. Hogwash.
Right, of equal stature,
Multiple paths to success.
Yeah, when you noted the free framework, it is family, religion, education, entrepreneurship. I'd love to step back and talk about the first two elements of free, because I call it free, I don't call it earth, right? Right?
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, there is a
Earth
reason
doesn't
for
sell
that.
really well.
Right? You talk a lot about your grandfather in the book, who literally, I guess around the dinner table, held up a newspaper and was acting as if he was reading so that you could sense that this is an important activity.
Yeah.
What does it mean to have that within your family? So it's the most core nucleus that develops a child. Yeah.
I think family is misunderstood so often. Growing up in a single-parent household, my mother and my brother, they were my family. When we were younger, we lived with my grandparents. One of the beauties of family, no matter what it looks like, how we define it, the configuration does matter, but not always as much as we think it does. Having a grandfather who was at the kitchen table every morning, flipping through the paper, left a profound impact on me as relates to the importance of reading. I didn't know then that he could not read. He was, fake it till you make it. He was faking it until I made it. He left such an indelible impression on me, the importance of education, that one day he wanted his grandsons to grow up and become all they could ever dream of being because they were equipped with the tools necessary. And the only way he could do that at the time was to fake it. But that made me hungry for more. I wanted to know what was so important in the newspaper that every single day, the Charleston Post or Courier, you open that newspaper and just go through it page by page by page. It's one of the reasons why I read the Wall Street Journal today, like my grandfather did, except for I do it on tablet,
Yeah, right.
But it's just such a wonderful example of family and the footprint in the sand that family leaves. If you don't find your family, if you're not born into a family that you really respect and appreciate, you'll make your own family.
Well, that's I often say it's not about the family that you're from, it's about the family that you form in your own life that can
make
be
it
the
a break
driving force.
One of my best friends formed a different kind of family, and it led him to what he called vacation. He started a neighborhood pharmaceutical company. He became a drug dealer. So,
a neighborhood pharmaceutical company.
Yes.
Noted.
Yes. And so that led him to 7 years of vacation.
Okay.
But he formed his family around commerce that led him in the wrong direction, because what he said was that there were no constraints on behavior, and there wasn't ambition, there was almost greed and selfish pursuits that led him to spending a couple years making a lot of money and then 7 years making nothing. And so what he would tell us if he were sitting on the stage, and I talk to him almost every day now still, he's one of my best friends now and a pastor, bless you. What he would tell you is take connections and relationships, take it seriously.
Yeah.
You can either have friends that drag you down or friends that require you to go up. Those friends can become your family. If we're not careful in today's America, there are these tribal forces that want you to define your family by what you look like or how you vote, and make sure that it's a homogenous pool, as pure as possible. And it's not in the best interest of the American family.
Right.
That's quite diverse, powerful, forward-looking. We need more of that. I need to have friends who don't look like me, who don't think like me, who are from a different faith from me. And frankly, I shouldn't say this because I'm up for re-election, even from other parties than mine.
Heaven forbid.
Heaven forbid, right? But the truth is that I benefit from having friends in the Senate who think differently than I, who want to solve complex problems for the American people and who are of good conscience. I benefit from that. And they're part of my congressional family. Kirsten Sinema and I get along really well. We work on legislation when we agree. We disagree 80% of the time, but the 20% of the time that we agree, we should work together.
Right.
Chris Coons and I worked on historically black colleges and university funding. Why? Because we think that if you have a big need and we can help fill that and it makes the country better off long term,
why not?
Why wouldn't you focus more on education?
You've mentioned a few times the importance of faith in your own development. I'd love for you to just talk a little bit more about what role you see the faith community, religion playing today. Are they active enough in helping to heal some of these divisions that you think are hurting our country? What should we be telling leaders of faith in our community?
Well, I think we're not active enough. You know, one of the things I've learned from my faith is that it teaches me how to treat you, and it warns me on how you may treat me back. The warning is really important as well, right? I mean, when you read Matthew 5:44, and you think about Charleston, South Carolina, you think about the Mother Emanuel church shooting where a racist walked into the church and killed 9 believers. And 36 hours later, the family members are looking at the killer and saying, "We forgive you." That'll change your entire community. 9 people changed the lives of 5 million South Carolinians almost overnight. Brought 20,000 people together, black and white, on a bridge to celebrate the diversity of our state. Because in the aftermath of that tragedy, people came together because the South Carolina family wanted to stand up and say, "Not in my house." And we were fighting over the Confederate flag for 50 plus years, and it came down in 17 days. Because when there is a purity of your purpose, when there is a depth of your love on display when it matters the most, nothing stops light, not even darkness.
Wow.
That's the power of faith, though.
Yep.
It didn't say how it said how they should treat him, not how he should have treated them. And what I think we miss in the faith realm is the importance of exercising our faith as a compass for ourselves, not necessarily forcing others to believe what we believe. If we want to impact others, let's live it right. Let's do it right, not preach it. I think it was St. Francis of Assisi who said, proselytize always. When necessary, use words.
That example is so, powerful. And I think about you as a legislator or a policymaker. How do you think about the reach of policy, of legislation? I mean, your first year in the Senate in 2013, there was this terrible incident in Chicago where there's a young girl gunned down by a gang member who thought that she was someone else. And President Obama at the time, he said, no law or set of laws can prevent every senseless act of violence in our country. When a child opens fire on another child, there's a hole in that child's heart that the government can't fill. So when you think of yourself as a legislator, policymaker, how do you use your position to speak to all of us that it's not always about the tactics of what law is passed, it's how we treat each other?
Yeah, I will say this will probably be disappointing to some of my legislative friends, but 99% of the legislation that we work on will never become law. If we're lucky, 99%. So the question is, what is this role that we have been given by the American people and by our friends back home in South Carolina from my perspective? There is a perch, there is an influence that comes with this position that is incredibly powerful and really important. That President Obama would refer to the fact that government isn't the answer, that community is far more important than government, is absolutely essential and necessary to never forget. Those types of shootings can be avoided by what we started talking about a few minutes ago around family. Gang members very consistently are joining a family and not a gang from their perspective, having spoken to some members. I can tell you that without any question, the more time we spend on building and developing community, the better off we will be. The more time we as elected officials see ourselves as community leaders, in addition to legislators, and we use our perch to bring people together, the better off we will be. Our country is having a hopelessness epidemic. There's a reason why we have 107,000 people who have died to overdoses. Out of the 35,000 folks, the numbers may be off a little bit, over 30,000 people died due to guns. 2/3, around 62%, were suicides. Out of all the conversations you'll hear around guns, the one we haven't heard much about is suicides, the leading cause. So we have a hopelessness epidemic on our hands as well. And we can bridge that through community.
Yep, and family, and fatherhood in
Family
particular.
is the foundation of community. I mean, the most important subgroup in any nation is the family. I used to be, back in a different life, when I was in local government, I was the chairman of the South Carolinians for Healthy Family Formation. Because as a guy that grew up without my dad in the household, it was so important for me to think about and talk about how family forms.
Yep.
And the foundation that comes with it. Yep. There's a security that Oscar will never know that he has because his dad's in the house. He won't even know that it's there. But if it's not there, I knew that it was missing.
I think about this all the time, particularly because I work with communities in which that is not the norm.
And I grew up in that community. And I will tell you that the difference is incredible. But a mentor came in at the right time, and a few of them, and helped fill some of the hole. I won't say bridge the gap because that's probably overstatement, but he did fill some of the potholes and gave me direction when I needed it. One guy named Al Jenkins, who was the small business owner, is a wonderful man, helped me start my Allstate insurance business when he gave me $40,000 and said, you know what? I went to the bank and said, can a brother get a loan? He said, well, what's your assets? I said, I got a 10-year-old car with 253,000 miles on it. They said, seriously, dude, do you not know what an asset is? I was like, obviously I don't, but it's all I got. So they laughed me out of the bank, but once I had $40,000, I had an asset. So the bank loaned me more money because I had money, right? Fascinating conversation unto itself. But the truth is that having a mentor who believed in me, who watched me for several years, he watched me from 1989 to 1999 before he made an investment in my business. He became a customer before he became an investor. But that 10 years where I had a strong, powerful African-American role model who taught me low profile. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Taught me how to be faithful in all your efforts. Taught me how to be disciplined when no one's watching. It was a force to be reckoned with. And then John Moniz, the other guy who happened to be a white guy, came when I was 15 and 19, taught me that having a job is a good thing, but creating jobs is a better thing. One day you'll know the difference between a profit and an income. And when you do, you'll be able to change your community. So there is a way for us to form a foundation that's better than the one maybe you have.
Yeah.
It's just better to have the dad in the house,
Yes.
though.
I know that, unbelievably, we're actually very short on time.
Oh, I talked too much. I said too little. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, it's been amazing. But I want to perhaps potentially end on how you end the book, which is that you fast forward to the year 2070.
Yeah.
And you envision this beautiful future that's within our grasp, that we're not so divided by race or class or gender or what separates us today. What has to happen between now and 2070 to reach the future that you lay out in the book?
For me to eat less French fries somewhere when it happens. For me, I think it really is this gut punch that we're going through right now is very instructive for this nation. I think it's necessary. I think it's necessary for us to wrestle with some of the more foundational issues of who we are and where we're going and how we're going to get there. Are we going to go together or not? I think the answer is we're going to go together or not at all. I think it's interesting and frankly helpful for us to go through this tribal conversation to see how hard it is to try to make up for past discrimination with future discrimination.
Yeah.
It's not working really well for us right now, but we're going to try to figure that out. We're going to figure it out quickly. But the truth is that all the tribes that we're putting together, and whether this Republican tribe or a Democrat tribe or a black one or a white one or a class system or a caste system, whether it's centralized control or not, I think all of that will burn off. And what it will produce is an American family that has more respect and appreciation for the necessity of pursuing the American dream as one family. And we will break the barriers that divide us into smaller categories so that people in the same socioeconomic groups see the problems the same and see the solutions the same. And those who are working on their behalf figure out setting the rules of the road and then getting out the way and letting people win or lose based on their efforts is a good thing, not a bad thing. And not thinking so much about centralized control, but thinking about the power of the individual being the greatest minority in the country. I think we're heading there. And that's really good news.
Yeah. So final question. What are the characteristics of the leader that needs to forge that future?
Well, I think someone has to be a purveyor of hope. I think we really need someone who sees this country as a single family unit and someone who's willing to stake their lives on the fact that they're right for that. And we need leaders who are sacrificial in order for us to get there, without any question. And then we need disciplined, focused, goal-oriented leaders who demand the best from the country because they're demanding it from themselves first.
Please join me in thanking Senator Tim Scott. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing that.